the once aloof eldest daughter of the Beijing elite circle. Bai Susu became a senseless vegetative patient in a car crash. I lost my entire fortune to steal her from the morgue. Hiding her in a -10 degrees basement, on New Year's Eve, the heating was cut off. Her body temperature dropped to the freezing point. In order to save her, I stripped off my clothes and held her tightly in my arms. Just when I thought we were going to freeze to death together, the body in my arms that had been stiff for 3 years suddenly trembled a bit. Her freezing fingers on my back wrote 2 words, "Run away." -15 degrees, the power switch of the basement was cut off by someone. In the dark, I touched Bai Susu's face, like touching a piece of raw meat just taken from the freezer. Susu, I patted her face. No reaction. I panicked. I grabbed the broken thermometer on the table and stuffed it under her armpit. Relying on the last bit of battery from the phone, I saw the mercury column stuck firmly at 34 degrees. Hypothermia, the doctor said, a vegetative patient in her severe stupor state. Once hypothermia occurs, her heart could stop beating at any time. I pulled over the only 2 torn cotton quilts on the bed and wrapped her in them. It was useless. She was even losing her breath. Her lips showed the dark blue of a dead person. Either way is death. I bit my lip until it bled, ripped off my sweater and coat, lifted the quilt and got inside. The moment our skin touched, I shivered from the cold. She was literally an ice sculpture. I couldn't care less. My arms tightly strangled her waist. Embedding her whole body into my arms, using my boiling chest to press against her heart, "Bai Susu, you cannot die." I pressed against her ear and gritted my teeth. "I owed 3 million to loan sharks just to steal you out. If you dare to die, I'll annoy you day and night even as a ghost." 1 second, 2 seconds, the person in my arms remained stiff. I closed my eyes in despair. Tears smashed into her neck, instantly freezing into ice chips. Suddenly, a very faint touch came from my back. I suddenly opened my eyes. A hand that hadn't moved for 3 years, was gripping the shirt fabric on my back. I froze, not even daring to breathe hard. Then, a drop of warm liquid slid down my neck. I lowered my head. By the faint snow light coming through the window, met a pair of eyes. Bai Susu had her eyes open. Tears were crazily pouring from the corners of her eyes. She looked at me. In her eyes, there was no emptiness of a vegetative person, only piercing pain and clarity. She had always been awake these 3 years. She was trapped in this living dead shell, hearing and seeing everything in the outside world. "Susu," my voice trembled uncontrollably, reaching out to touch her face, but she tried her best to turn her head and avoid my hand. The next second, her fingers gripping my clothes started to slide. A horizontal stroke, a vertical stroke, a left falling stroke. She was riding on my back. The movements were extremely slow. With every stroke, she had to pant for a long time. "Run away." After writing these 2 words, her hand heavily smashed onto the bedboard, unable to lift it ever again. She stared at me intensely, eye sockets completely red. Her eyes were full of pleading. I suddenly realized the power switch wasn't an accidental trip. It was cut off by someone. Someone came looking. Bang. A loud noise came from above. The iron door of the basement was fiercely kicked, shaking the dust off the ceiling, falling down rustling. "Lin Fan, get the hell out. I know you hid that bitch inside." It was the voice of Bai Susu's biological younger brother, Bai Yu. The blood in my whole body instantly dropped to the freezing point. 3 years ago, Bai Susu got into a car crash. It was Bai Yu who tampered with it. In order to seize control of the Bai family, he bribed doctors to announce Bai Susu's brain death, to send her directly to the crematorium. It was me, a bottom-level driver who wasn't even fit to tie his shoes, rushing into the hospital holding a gasoline barrel, forcing them to hand the person over to me. Bang, bang. The sound of smashing the door grew louder. The chains on the iron door let out overwhelmed wails. Bai Susu was breathing rapidly, making wheezing sounds from her throat like a broken bellows. She desperately used her head to bump the bedboard, signaling me to escape quickly. My eyes felt sore and swollen. I firmly pressed her head down, pulling her back into my arms. "I want leave." I pulled the quilt and wrapped her tightly. 3 years ago, I didn't leave. Today, I won't leave either. I fumbled out a rusty boning knife from under the pillow, gripping it tightly in my hand. Bai Yu outside the door sneered. "Not coming out, right? Fine. Pour the gasoline. Today is New Year's Eve. I will send you pair of bitch and bastard to the sky to set off fireworks together." The pungent smell of gasoline seeped in through the door gap. The gasoline smell got stronger and stronger. The pleading in Bai Susu's eyes turned into despair. She suddenly opened her mouth, biting fiercely on her own tongue. She wanted to commit suicide. "Didn't want to drag me down? Are you crazy?" My eyes nearly popped out. I pinched her chin hard, stuffed my own fingers into her mouth. Sharp teeth instantly pierced my fingers. The smell of blood spread between our lips and teeth. She bit so hard, yet the tears flowed so fiercely. Don't be afraid. I wiped her tears with blood-stained hands, bent down and kissed her freezing forehead. I said, if we die together. Boom, a loud crash. The basement's iron door was finally smashed open. Several blinding flashlight beams swept in instantly, piercing my eyes so I couldn't open them. Several bodyguards in black suits rushed in, dragged me forcefully off the bed. I struggled desperately, waving the boning knife, but was hit on the back of the head with a club. My vision went black. I fell heavily onto the concrete floor. A pair of custom leather shoes stepped on my face. Bai crouched down, looking at me in disgust. A lowly dog is worthy of touching my sister. He let out a sneer. His foot crushed down hard on my cheekbone. My face was covered in blood. Staring intensely at Bai Susu on the bed, the bodyguard rudely lifted the quilt. Bai Susu was like a broken rag doll, exposed just like that to the freezing air. Her eyes were wide open, staring dead at Byu. Violent panting came from her throat. Oh, not completely dead yet. Bai stood up, walked to the bedside, pulled a syringe out of his pocket. Inside was a clear liquid, potassium chloride. Inject this and the heart stops abruptly. Even forensic doctors can't find the cause. Bai casually flicked the syringe. Sister, you've monopolized the Bai family for so many years. It's time to make room for me. He grabbed Bai Susu's arm, the needle aimed at her vein. Animal, you dare touch her. I roared like a madman, opened my mouth and bit hard into the ankle of the bodyguard stepping on me. The bodyguard screamed in pain, kicked my ribs, crack. The sound of ribs breaking. I curled into a ball in pain, spat out a large mouthful of blood. Bai looked back at me, laughed mockingly. Lin Fan, do you know why I came for you guys only today? He pulled out a document from his coat, threw it on my face. By group's unpaid equity transfer agreement. These 3 years I spent so much effort to forge. Her signature and fingerprint. Now all the procedures are completed. Her being alive is actually a hidden danger. Bai pierced Bai Susu's skin with the needle. My eyes nearly burst open, watching helplessly as that lethal liquid was about to be pushed into her blood vessel. Just in this nick of time, Bai Susu, who was pinned on the bed, suddenly stopped struggling. Those eyes of hers that were originally unfocused due to fear suddenly focused, staring intensely at Byu. Then, under everyone's ghost-seeing gazes, this person paralyzed for 3 years, diagnosed as a vegetative patient in severe stupor, actually sat up straight from the bed. She firmly reversed and locked Bayu's wrist holding the needle. Only a crisp crack was heard. Bayu let out a miserable scream like a slaughtered pig. My hand. Bayu's screams echoed in the cramped basement. His wrist was snapped abruptly. The syringe fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. The bodyguards were all dumbfounded, looking at Bai Susu sitting on the bed like watching a monster. I was also stunned, even forgetting the severe pain of my ribs. Bai Susu didn't look at anyone. She slowly, stiffly turned her head. Her gaze fell on my blood-covered face. At that moment, I saw the ice and snow in her eyes melt instantly, turning into monstrous killing intent and agony. She pulled out the still-bleeding the 4th needle from the back of her hand and stood up unsteadily, 3 years without touching the ground. Her legs were as thin as 2 dead branches. The moment they touched the ground, she fell forward. I didn't know where the strength came from. Suddenly pushed away the bodyguard on me, pounced over and caught her. She crashed into my arms, very light, like a feather. Susu. I held her tightly, voice so hoarse it lost its tune. She leaned on my shoulder, panting heavily, and then she raised the hand that just broke Bayu's wrist, gently touched the bloodstains on my face. Lin Fan, she spoke. Her voice was hoarse and harsh, like sandpaper rubbing against glass, but clearly entered everyone's ears. So silly. My tears instantly burst the dam. For 3 years, I talked to myself in front of her every day, and finally waited for this reply. Sister, you are not paralyzed. Bayu clutched his broken wrist and backed away repeatedly, face as pale as paper. Bai Susu slowly turned around. She leaned in my arms, with a gaze as cold as an evil spirit crawling out of hell. Bayu, she stared at her biological brother, pausing at every word. Not killing me in the car crash back then is the biggest mistake of your life? Get them. Kill them. Kill them. Bayu panicked completely, yelling hysterically at the bodyguards. The 4 bodyguards woke up as if from a dream, pulled out telescopic batons and pounced at us. I subconsciously wanted to protect Bai Susu behind me, but she suddenly reached out, pulled the rusty boning knife from my hand. The next second, she was like a long, dormant female leopard, lunging out fiercely. Movements were rusty but extremely ruthless. Theft, the blade accurately pierced into the thigh of the bodyguard charging at the very front. The bodyguard screamed and fell. Bai Susu used the momentum to pull the knife out and backhanded the handle fiercely onto the temple of another bodyguard. In just a dozen seconds, 4 strong bodyguards all fell howling in pools of blood. Bai Susu stood in place, chest heaving violently. Her stamina was already overdrawn to the limit. The hand holding the knife trembled like sifting chaff, but she still stared dead at Baiyu. Shivering in the corner. "You don't come here." Baiyu's crotch was wet in a large patch. Crawling and rolling to hide outside the door, Bai Susu didn't chase. She suddenly turned around and dropped the knife, stumbling and lunging toward me. "Lin Fan, go." She grabbed my arm. Voice hurried. "The drug's effect only lasts 10 minutes. I jolted suddenly. "Drug effect?" I looked at her in astonishment. Bai Susu's face had gone from the previous morbid pale to a bizarre flush. Her pupils started to dilate. Her body convulsed violently and uncontrollably. "What drug effect? Susu, what's wrong with you?" I hugged her backhand, heart sinking to the bottom. "Adrenaline. I just bit the capsule hidden under my tongue." She tightly gripped my collar, her nails almost embedded into my flesh. Every word was accompanied by heavy panting. "Go. He still has people outside." My brain buzzed. 3 years ago, before she got into the car crash, was the most resolute person in power at the Bai Group. How could she not have a backup plan? She turned herself into a vegetative state and even hid a lethal, potential stimulating drug under her tongue, just to seek a ray of survival in a desperate situation. And she didn't use it these 3 years because she knew once used it would overdraw her last life. Today, to save me, she used it. "Stop talking. It'll take you away." I endured the severe pain of my broken ribs, hoisted her onto my back, so light it broke my heart. Stepping on a floor of blood and howling bodyguards, I dashed out of the basement. On the streets of New Year's Eve, heavy snow was swirling. Splendid fireworks bloomed in the distant night sky. Carrying Bai Susu on my back in the snow, over my ankles I ran wildly. The piercing cold wind scraped my face like a knife, but I only felt my back getting hotter and hotter. Bai Susu's body temperature was rising rapidly. This was a sign of the drug's backlash. "Lin Fan." She lay on my back, voice so weak it was almost covered by the wind and snow. "I'm here, Susu, don't sleep. We are going to the hospital." "Well, be there soon." I gritted my teeth. Tears mixed with blood water fell down. "Don't go to the hospital." Her cold fingers gently rubbed the side of my face. "The Bai family will find us." "Then where do we go?" "Anywhere is fine. As long as you can survive." I was on the verge of collapse. "Let's go. Go see the river." I stopped abruptly. I gnashed my teeth to pieces, lifted her up a bit higher on my back, and sprinted towards the Cross River Bridge 2 kilometers away. The snow fell heavier and heavier, smashing into my face like knife cuts. The person on my back was like a furnace, burning hot. This was the heat exchanged by overdrawing life. River wind carrying ice chips poured into my throat. I coughed up a mouthful of bloody froth, and finally climbed onto the riverbank. The New Year's Eve bell rang. Fireworks exploded all over the sky. The colorful light illuminated Bai Susu's pale face. She leaned in my arms, eyes half open. "Susu, look at the fireworks." I wiped the blood water off her face, voice trembling terribly. She forced an ugly smile, fingers fumbling to grab the hem of my shirt. "Lin Fan," she panted. Every word carried the smell of blood. 3 years ago, the car was tampered with. The brakes failed. I froze. My heart felt like it was tightly squeezed by an invisible hand. I noticed it early on. She started coughing, black blood spilling from the corners of her mouth. "Then why didn't you tell me?" My eyes were red, letting out a beast-like low growl from my throat. "Because you were in the passenger seat." She stared into my eyes. Before hitting the guardrail, I turned the steering wheel and brought the driver's seat forward to take the hit. Boom. Something in my brain completely exploded. The car crashed 3 years ago. I was completely unharmed. She fell into a deep coma. I always thought it was fate playing tricks. It turns out she exchanged it with her life. Crazy. Why did you do this? I roared out loud. Tears burst the dam. "Fool," she raised her hand, wiped away my tears. "I owe you." "You don't. You don't owe me." I held her tightly, wishing I could rub her into my flesh and blood. She shook her head, breathing getting fainter and fainter. She struggled to raise that trembling hand, fingers fumbling at her collar, nails scratching the skin on her neck. She pulled hard. Buttons popped and fell into the snow. She lowered her head. Teeth bit down on a red string hidden close to her body, yanking it outward fiercely. A bloody brass key fell out. She spat the key into her palm and stuffed it into my hand. Locker 37, Basement 2 of Jianchang Railway Station. Inside is the ledger of BYU's money laundering. "And a trust fund I left for you? Take it and go far away." I suddenly smashed the key into the snow. "I don't want money. I just want you alive." I tore open her clothes like crazy, trying to use the cold wind to cool her down. It was useless. Her skin was shockingly hot, pulse so fast it seemed to jump out of her chest. Cough, cough. She started coughing violently. Large mouthfuls of black blood sprayed on the snow. Shocking to the eyes. Listen to me. She grabbed my wrist tightly. Her nails embedded into my flesh. Live on for me. To watch Bai go to hell. Suddenly, blinding high beams tore through the night. Several black SUVs charged up the riverbank like beasts. Piercing brake sounds slashed the night sky. Woof, woof, woof. Vicious dog barks, mixed with messy footsteps approached. Follow the bloodstains. They couldn't run far. Bai's exasperated voice came over. Catch that bitch. I want to see her corpse if she's dead. My body hair stood on end. Grabbed the boning knife on the ground. Susu, don't be afraid. I shielded her behind me. I'll kill them. I gritted my teeth, eyes full of killing intent. Even if I die, I'll drag Bai down with me. Bai Susu suddenly convulsed violently. She used her last bit of strength and suddenly slammed into my back. I was caught off guard. My foot slipped. I rolled down the riverbank. Below the bank was an abandoned sewage culvert, overgrown with weeds. With a foul stench, I fell heavily into the mud. Piercing pain came from my broken ribs. I struggled, wanting to climb up. Bai Susu's heart-wrenching coughing came from above. She deliberately made a noise. Over there. Hurry. Flashlight beams instantly focused on the edge of the riverbank. Don't come over. Bai Susu's voice revealed despair. She was distracting them. Susu, my eyes were splitting. Just as I was about to yell out, a muddy rag was stuffed into my mouth. It was my own hand. I bit the back of my hand tightly, swallowing that roar back into my stomach. I couldn't make a sound. If I made a sound, she would die in vain. I lay in the foul mud, through the gaps in the weeds. Staring fixedly upwards, several bodyguards rushed over. Bai kicked Bai Susu in the stomach. Run. Run again, you effed. Bai's face was ferocious. Bai Susu was like a broken rag doll. Rolling in the snow, without letting out a scream, she lay quietly in the snow, her eyes fixed on the direction of the culvert. She was looking at me. In those eyes, there was attachment and determination. Where is that bastard? Bai, you grabbed her hair. Lifting her whole body up, Bai Susu spat out a mouthful of bloody froth. Spitting on Bai's face. Jumped into the river, she laughed, laughing miserably. Fuck. Bai wiped the blood off his face, slapped her backhand. Search for me. I want to see him alive, or see his corpse if dead. Several bodyguards searched the riverside with flashlights. The beams swept past the edge of the culvert several times. I held my breath, pressing my body tightly into the mud. Sewage poured into my mouth, fishy and foul. I swallowed it along with blood and tears. Boss, the river current is too fast. Probably washed away long ago, a bodyguard reported. Bai spat out saliva. Consider him lucky. Take this bitch away. He threw Bai Susu to the bodyguards like throwing trash. Find a place with nobody around. Understood. The bodyguards, like dragging a sack, dragged one of Bai Susu's legs, leaving a long blood trail in the snow. Bai Susu didn't struggle. Her arm hung limply on the ground. Lifeless. I watched helplessly as she was stuffed into the trunk. The SUV drove away. The fireworks were still blooming in the sky. The river wind was still piercing. I lay in the culvert, trembling all over, not from the cold, but from hatred. I let go of my blood-dripping bitten hand, opened my palm. That bloody brass key was deeply embedded in the flesh. I pulled out the key, gripped it until my knuckles turned white. Blood dripped through my fingers into the mud. Bai, I muttered this name, crushing every word between my teeth. I leaned against the moss-covered wall and slowly stood up. The broken ribs rubbed against flesh and blood, pain deep into the marrow. I didn't stop, crawling out of the culvert step by step. The bloodstains on the snow were almost covered by the blizzard. I hid the key close to my body, picked up the boning knife on the ground. The blade reflected the neon lights across the river. I turned around, walking into the boundless night. The snowstorm got heavier. The piercing cold shot from the soles of my feet to my head. I took off the only shirt left on me, tore it into strips, tightly wrapping my broken ribs circle by circle. With every circle, the pain doubled. Cold sweat mixed with river water flowed down. I bit the back of that boning knife, preventing myself from making a sound. Wound bandaged. I spat out the knife. As the cold wind blew, the blood scabs on my chest cracked. I didn't care at all. Only the scene of Bai Susu being dragged away in my mind. That blood trail dragged out in the snow became a cursed seal branded on my retina. Locker 37, Basement 2 of Jiangcheng Railway Station. Bai Susu's weak voice echoed in my ears. I clenched the brass key in my pocket. The metal edges pierced the skin of my palm. This is the chip she exchanged with her life? I stepped on the snow covering my ankles, walking forward along the shadows of the riverbank. Couldn't take the main road. Bai's men must still be patrolling nearby. Sirens sounded in the distance, Zheng Cheng. On New Year's Eve, noise intertwining with sin. I was like a rat crawling in the gutter, avoiding all surveillance cameras. 3 hours later, I stood in the unfinished building opposite Jiangchang railway station. It was almost dawn. The station's digital clock flashed red numbers. 4:30 in the morning. A few scattered homeless people shivered in torn quilts on the square. I leaned against a concrete pillar, panting heavily. Excessive blood loss made my vision repeatedly go dark. I grabbed a handful of dirty snow and stuffed it in my mouth. Piercingly cold snow melt slid down my esophagus, stimulating my nearly numb nerves. I stared at the station entrance. Several black sedans parked at the edge of the square. Someone was smoking inside the cars. The flickering light was especially conspicuous in the night. Bai Susu's men. They moved really fast. When Bai Susu gave me the key, Bai Susu must have heard the commotion. He guessed Bai Susu left a backup plan and directly sent people to block the train station. I touched the cloth strips around my ribs. They were completely soaked in blood. Forcing my way in was a dead end. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to calm down. Bai Susu hiding something so important at the train station was definitely not a randomly chosen place. Basement 2 was the oldest area of Jiangchang railway station, connected to the abandoned underground air raid shelter. I opened my eyes. My gaze locked onto a vent on the side of the station. 3 years ago, when I was a lowly thug, I used to fight for territory in that area. That vent led straight to the storage room on basement 2. I tucked the boning knife into my lower back, climbed over the wall of the unfinished building, moving forward along the green belt like a shadow. The snow stopped. Stepping on the accumulated snow made crunching sounds. I slowed my pace, fearful with every step. 10 meters away from the vent, 2 men in black suits were peeing next to the vent. Damn it, making us brave the cold wind during the new year. Stop complaining, the boss said. Not even a fly is allowed in. That kid was heavily injured, probably died in some corner long ago. I hid behind the trash can, gripped the knife handle tightly. The 2 men pulled up their pants, turned around, preparing to leave. There is only one chance. My legs suddenly exerted force, darted out like a cheetah. My left hand covered the mouth of the man walking behind. My right hand held the boning knife in reverse. The blade precisely pierced into his back. Without making a sound, the man in front sensed something was wrong. Just as he was about to turn his head, I pulled out the knife, kicked the back of the corpse's knee. The corpse fell forward, smashing right onto the man in front. The 2 rolled into a ball. I mounted him, my knee firmly pressed against his throat, the knife tip resting against his eyeball. Speak. I lowered my voice, my eyes without a trace of a living person's warmth. That man shook with fear, nodding crazily. Where did you take Bai Susu? I applied force to my wrist. The knife tip pierced his eyelid. Blood flowed into his eye. I don't know. The boss took her away personally. His voice trembled like sifting chaff. Where did he take her? I increased the force. The abandoned chemical plant in the western suburbs. The boss said he would handle it personally. I gasped. The western suburb chemical plant. That's the place Bai Susu specifically uses for dirty work. Bai Susu ending up there bodes ill. Spare my life, boss, the man pleaded. I expressionlessly pulled out the knife. The blade slit his carotid artery. Blood gushed out, splattering all over my face. I stood up, wiped the blood off my face, dragged the 2 corpses into the shadows behind the trash can, removed the louvers of the vent, crawled inside. The duct was filled with dust and the smell of rat feces. I alternately used my elbows and knees, crawling forward in the narrow duct. My broken ribs rubbed against the sheet metal. The pain caused cold sweat to pour out. I gritted my teeth and forcibly endured it. Don't know how long I crawled. A faint light appeared below. I looked down through the grill. It was the storage room on basement 2, empty. I kicked open the grill, jumped down. My legs gave way the moment I landed. Falling to my knees, I stood up, leaning on the wall, pushed open the storage room door. Basement 2 had rows of dilapidated lockers. The lighting was dim. The air was damp. I looked along the numbers. 25, 26.37, found it. The locker door was covered in rust. I took out that bloody brass key, hands trembling so much I couldn't align it with the keyhole. Lin Fan, live on. Bai Susu's voice sounded in my ears again. I took a deep breath, steadied my wrist. Click. The lock opened. I pulled open the door. Inside was a black waterproof bag. I unzipped it. On top was a thick stack of documents. By group's cash flow, anomaly reports, and evidence of money laundering. Every page was stamped with an official seal, signed with BYU's name. Ironclad evidence. Below the documents was a black bank card. Under the card was a note. The handwriting was elegant. It was Bai Susu's handwriting. The password is your birthday. Leave Jiangcheng. Forget me. I gripped the note, knuckles cracking from the grip. Forget. How can I forget? She pulled me out of the mire, gave me human dignity, and turned herself into a vegetative state to save me. Now she doesn't even want her life, just to pave a path for me to live. I stuffed the note into my mouth and swallowed it. Put the waterproof bag on my back. By you. You want me to leave? Dream on? I found a rusty iron bar from the storage room, weighed it in my hand, turned and walked towards the stairwell. Western suburb chemical plant. Here I come. Even if it's a mountain of swords and a sea of fire, I will drag you down to hell with me. I pushed open the security door on basement 2. Outside stood a dark crowd of a dozen people, all in identical black suits. Holding machetes and steel pipes in their hands, the leader was Bai Yu's trusted aide, Baldy Kong. He spat out the toothpick in his mouth, sneered, "Boy, the boss guessed right. You indeed came to fetch the things. Hand over the bag, it'll leave your corpse intact." Baldy Kong tapped the steel pipe in his hand, making a piercing sound of clashing metal. I looked at them, slowly tore off the cloth strips wrapped around my body. The broken ribs were exposed to the air. I raised the iron bar in my hand, pointed it at Baldy Kong. The blood on the blade was still dripping. Those who block me die. That night at Jiangcheng railway station, blood flowed like a river. I smashed to pieces with the iron bar in my hand, a mouthful of Baldy Kiang's teeth, endured more than a dozen knife wounds, smashed open the vent on basement 2, and plunged headfirst into the rolling Yangtze River. River water poured into my lungs. Abandoned rebar on the riverbed tore up my left cheek. My left leg crashed into a bridge pier. Suffering a comminuted fracture, I didn't die. The king of hell refused to take me. He let me stay. To claim lives 3 years later, Zhengchang CBD by group headquarters building, 100 meters high, strong winds howling. I tightened my safety rope. Holding a window squeegee in my hand, below my feet was an abyss of heavy traffic. A cheap steel plate was installed in my left leg, piercing pain with every movement. Half of my face covered in ugly centipede-like scars. Now my name is Ashu, a mute and lame high-rise window cleaner. A faint static sound came from the earpiece. Brother Fan, found it. The voice of the informant Mouse reached my ears. The remnants of that old dog Bai Yu bribed the fleet's driver. They will make their move this afternoon. I wiped off the mist on the glass. Route time. I lowered my voice. 3 p.m. Dump truck at the South City elevated entrance. Mouse spoke extremely fast. Make sure they don't return. I spat out a few words. Understood. The brothers have set the trap. Another voice cut into the earpiece. It's informant, old ghost, Brother Fan. The turf over in the west of the city? Bai Yu's men want to interfere. Chop off the leader's hand. Throw it at the door of the Bai family elders. I ordered coldly. Got it. The trust fund Susu left me 3 years ago. I haven't touched a single cent. It all turned into hidden cash flows. Poured into Jiancheng's underground black market. In 3 years' time, I, in the dark corners of this city, built a massive intelligence network. I don't act as a mob boss. Don't touch businesses under the sun. I am only Bai Susu's shadow, clearing all the venomous snakes hiding in the dark for her. The squeegee pushed away the last water stain. The bulletproof glass in front became transparent. CEO's office. Bai Susu sat behind a wide mahogany desk. Wearing a well-tailored black haute couture suit, short, neat hair, she came back alive. Not only survived, but cleansed the Bai family with thunderous methods. Becoming the iron-blooded queen that terrifies the Zhongcheng business world, but I can see the dark circles under her eyes, can see her tense back. Several Bai family elders sat opposite her, slamming the table. Through the glass, I couldn't hear the sound, but I read the furious lip sync of that balding old man. Bai Susu, don't be too arrogant. The Bai family is not yours alone. Bai Susu had no expression. She picked up the teacup on the table and violently smashed it at the old man's feet. Lips parted slightly. Get out. The elders stormed out, slamming the door in exasperation. The office was empty. She leaned against the chair back, shoulders slumped instantly. She raised her hand, rubbing the bridge of her nose forcefully, revealing unhideable exhaustion. I was hanging outside the window, extending a hand wearing a rough work glove, through the cold bulletproof glass, tracing her silhouette in the void. 3 years, over 1,000 days and nights, clearly so close, yet separated by an uncrossable sea of people. I can only look at her once a day in this way. 2:50 p.m. Bai Susu's motorcade drove out of the underground garage, 3 black bulletproof Maybachs, gleaming coldly under the scorching sun. I grabbed the main rope, rappelled down quickly along the building's outer wall. Hovering at the height of the 3rd floor, Mouse's voice in the earpiece suddenly pitched up. With a voice-cracking roar, Brother Fan, something happened. The traffic light system was cut off by hackers. That dump truck started moving ahead of time, charging towards the main entrance of the building. I abruptly looked down. A heavy dump truck loaded with IB, like a berserk beast. Ignoring roadblocks, accelerating wildly, heading straight for the second Maybach, where Bai Susu was. Susu, my eyes were splitting open, letting out a beast-like low growl from my throat. Too late. The bodyguard's car was stuck tight in the inner lane. Crash. A deafening loud noise. The dump truck fiercely crashed into the Maybach's front. The Teuton bulletproof car was knocked spinning in place. The truck rolled over from the impact. The steel cable tied in the truck bed snapped. Tons of I-beams poured down like a rainstorm. Among them, the thickest steel beam carrying terrifying kinetic energy smashed straight towards the Maybach's backseat window. Without half a second of hesitation, I yanked off the safety buckle's limiter. Both feet kicked fiercely against the building's glass wall. My whole body, like a cannonball shot out of a barrel, gripped the main rope and swung out. The sound of wind tearing my eardrums, gravity pulling at my internal organs, the rope suspended 100 meters high, drew a thrilling and soul-stirring arc. I stared fixedly at that falling steel beam. Closer, even closer. I let go of the squeegee in my hand, opened my arms in mid-air. My waist suddenly exerted force. Using that crippled leg with the steel plate, fiercely kicked against the protruding billboard on the second floor. Using the violent reaction force, my body changed its trajectory, forcibly crashing into that lethal IBM. Theft. A teeth-knocking sound of sharp blade entering flesh. The sharp edge of the steel beam instantly pierced my right shoulder. Flesh and blood were torn apart. Shoulder blade shattered. Severe pain submerged me like a tsunami. I crushed my back molars from biting so hard. Both hands tightly hugged the steel beam. Using all the strength in my body, used a body of flesh and blood to change its falling direction. Clang. The I-beam scraped past the Maybach's rear window and smashed onto the ground, sparks flying in all directions. A large pit was smashed into the asphalt road. The bulletproof glass let out a muffled sound, vibrating into a large patch of spider-web-like cracks. I lost my balance, fell heavily onto the hood, covered with glass shards, and rolled down to the car window. Fresh blood surged down my arm, instantly dyeing the car window glass red. The world seemed to freeze at this moment. Inside the car, Bai Susu was pinned tightly under two bodyguards. She pushed the bodyguards away, raised her head, and through the cracked bulletproof glass met my eyes. I was wearing a dirty mask. The exposed half of my face crawled with ugly scars, hair wet with sweat and blood, stuck to my forehead. But these eyes she had looked at for 3 years. I saw her pupils suddenly contract. The originally ice-cold mask instantly shattered into pieces. Her whole body began to tremble violently. Like fallen leaves in the autumn wind, she suddenly threw herself at the car window, palms pressed tightly against the glass, fingertips through the cold glass, tremblingly tracing my bleeding shoulder. Tears instantly crashed down. "Boss Bai, it's dangerous. Don't get close to the window." The bodyguards roared and went to pull her. She struggled desperately, eyes staring fixedly at me, lips trembling, silently shouting 2 words, "Lin Fan." I was in so much pain I was about to faint. Yet I bit down hard on the tip of my tongue. There were people all around, screaming pedestrians, onlookers holding up phones to take pictures, and spies of Bayou's remnants mixed in the crowd. Countless pairs of eyes staring at this car, staring at her. I cannot acknowledge her. Once we acknowledge each other, a piece of trash like me will become her weakness, becoming a target for those hiding in the dark, venomous snakes to attack her. I supported myself on the ground with my intact left hand, struggled to climb up, dragged that crippled left leg and took a step back, lowered my head and hunched my back, pretending to have a bottom-level cleaner's expected panic and humility. Bai Susu's hands froze on the glass, eye sockets so red they could drip blood. She understood my step back, understood my forbearance, tears welling up in her eyes. Yet she bit her lip tightly. Forcibly forcing the tears back down, she abruptly turned her head. Forcing herself to look away, her back straightened up once again, restoring the look of that cold-blooded and ruthless person in power of the Bai family. "Drive." She coldly spat out one word. "But boss, Bai." That worker outside, the bodyguard hesitated. "I told you to drive, even if you run him over, drive." Voice sharp, revealing a hysterical determination. The Maybach's engine let out a deafening roar. Tires violently rubbed against the ground, emitting pungent white smoke. The car reversed abruptly, bypassing the mess all over the ground. Sped away. I stood in the ruins, watching the taillights disappear around the corner. Blood from my right shoulder dripped onto the asphalt road, splashing into dark red flowers. It hurt a lot, but I felt relieved in my heart. She understood me. In order to live on, we must act like strangers. Siren sounds approached from all directions. I covered my shoulder, mixed into the panicked crowd, tore off the blood-stained work uniform, ducked into the intricate back alleys, Mouse's gloomy voice came from the earpiece. Brother Fan, it's clear now. The dump truck driver is a former lackey of BYU. The guy is stuck in the cabin and isn't dead yet. I leaned against a damp brick wall, panting heavily. Take him out. Fake the scene as an accidental brake failure. Understood? It will be clean. Hanging up the communication, I dragged my broken body, walking step by step back to the urban village. Late night in the basement, the air was filled with a musty smell. I took off my shirt, biting a torn towel, poured high-concentration alcohol directly onto the penetrating wound on my right shoulder. White foam rolled up, muscles spasmed violently. I picked up a needle and thread, stitching my raw flesh in front of the mirror. As the needle tip pierced the skin, I thought of that New Year's Eve 3 years ago. She stuffed the key into my hand and told me to leave. I thought of basement 2 of the railway station. I held an iron bar and shattered the bones of over a dozen people. I also almost died there. If I hadn't thought about her still waiting for me, I wouldn't have lasted until jumping into the river. Every stitch piercing through flesh and skin felt like being sliced alive. After sewing the last stitch, I collapsed onto the broken wooden bed. Staring at the yellowed ceiling, my mind was full of her trembling gaze through the glass. For 3 years, she lived more bitterly than me. Alone, she carved a bloody path out of the man-eating Bai family. I couldn't even give her a hug. Extremely light footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. The sound of high heels stepping on the concrete floor was very light and slow. I abruptly flipped over and leaped up, grabbed the boning knife from under the pillow, pressed against the back of the door, holding my breath. The footsteps stopped outside the door. No knock on the door. No, crashing the door. Death-like silence. A few seconds later, the footsteps sounded again, gradually fading away. I gripped the knife handle, slowly pulled open the rusty iron door. The corridor was empty. Only the dim sound-activated lights flickered. I lowered my head. Under the door gap quietly lay a folded piece of white paper. I bent down and picked up the note. A familiar, cold cedar fragrance hit my face. It was the scent on her body. I remembered this scent for 3 years, missed it for 3 years. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the note. There were only 4 words on it. The handwriting was sharp, yet revealed trembling marks that pierced through the paper. Don't die. Wait for me. I fiercely crumpled the note into my palm. The edges of the paper wad pierced the skin of my palm. Mouse's rapid panting came from the earpiece. Brother Fan, something big happened. Those few old geezers left from Bayou's side bribed the supervisor of the banquet. They got a hold of a type of extinct neurotoxin in the black market. Colorless and odorless. Just a single drop. Cardiac arrest within 5 minutes. Even forensic doctors can't find the cause of death. They plan to use tonight's toasting session to directly take Boss Bai's life. I suddenly stood up, yanked off the bloody bandage just sewn onto my right shoulder. Where is the banquet? I gritted my back molars. Every word carried a bloody scent. Top floor of the Peninsula Hotel. The highest level of security. Not even a fly can get in. Mouse's voice tightened. Get me a waiter's uniform. I dug out the black leather suitcase from under the bed. Brother Fan, are you crazy? The penetrating wound on your right shoulder is still bleeding. That's going to seek death. If she dies, what's the point of me being alive? I cut off the communication, pried open the suitcase lock, took out a realistic human skin mask. Facing the shattered mirror, bit by bit attached it onto that half. Of the face covered with centipede scars, nobody's allowed to touch her tonight. The Peninsula Hotel. Heavy snow blocked the streets. I changed into a waiter's vest a size too small, carrying a silver tray, lowered my head and walked through the noisy kitchen corridor. The wound on my right shoulder completely burst open. Warm blood trickled down my back, soaking through the gauze inside. The stickiness was maddening. I completely ignored it, staring intently at the ajar golden carved door ahead. Pushed the door open. The dazzling crystal chandelier stung my eyes. Fragrant clothes and glamorous shadows, interweaving silks and lights. Bai Susu stood in the center of the hall, in a burgundy haute couture gown. Like a blood-red rose blooming in the ice and snow, she was holding a goblet, looking coldly at the hypocritical smiling faces around her. Several Bai family elders holding wine glasses surrounded her tightly in the middle. Director Zhao, the leader, smiled like an old fox. The wrinkles on his face squished together. Susu, these 3 years you carried the Bai family, decisive in your actions. We uncles have seen it all. Tonight, this glass of wine, we uncles toast to you. Drink it. Past grudges are written off. From now on, you still call the shots in the Bai family. I pulled down the brim of my hat, silently approaching along the base of the wall. My gaze locked onto the floor supervisor behind Director Zhao, who was placing 2 glasses of champagne onto a tray. His thumb twitched slightly. A faint trace of white powder fell into the left wine glass, instantly dissolving. Disappearing without a trace, bubbles were still tumbling at the bottom of the glass. Like the Grim Reaper's calling, "Go serve boss by the wine." The supervisor grabbed my arm and pushed me forward forcefully. I naturally took the tray, steadied my footing, walked towards Bai Susu step by step. 10 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps. She turned around. Her gaze casually swept over me. I kept my head down firmly, held my breath, daring not to leak a single trace of emotion. "Boss, Bai, please have some wine." I deliberately lowered my voice, hoarse like a broken bellows. Director Zhao raised his glass with a smile, blocking Bai Susu's retreat. "Come, Susu, give uncle some face." Bai Susu was expressionless. She reached out her hand wearing black velvet gloves. Her fingertips were about to touch the glass rim of that poisoned wine. I abruptly raised my head. Before anyone could react, my left hand picked up that poisoned champagne, tilted my neck back, drank it all in one gulp. The cold liquid poured down my throat into my stomach. Carrying the temperature of death, I grabbed the other clean glass of wine from the tray with a backhand and forcibly shoved it into her hand. "This glass is clean." I looked into her eyes, spitting out for words. The whole venue fell dead silent. The smile on Director Zhao's face instantly froze. The wine glass in his hand almost fell to the ground. Bai Susu froze in place. Her pupils contracted abruptly. She stared fixedly into my eyes. Those eyes she had looked at for 3 years, red lips trembling violently. Boom! My internal organs felt like they were poured. With a pot of boiling molten iron, the highly toxic poison acted extremely fiercely. The tearing severe pain instantly cut off my nerves. I let out a muffled groan, bit down hard on the tip of my tongue. The rust-like smell of blood exploded in my mouth. I abruptly took a half step back. Avoiding the hand, she reached out, turned around and bumped through the crowd beside me, mixed into the panicked line of waiters, retreated to the darkest corner of the hall. Leaning against the cold Roman pillar, slid down to sit on the floor as if drained of strength. My vision began to blur. Cold sweat soaked my whole body. I covered my mouth tightly. Black poisoned blood surged out crazily through my fingers, dripping onto the pristine white marble floor, shocking to the eyes. On the stage, Bai Susu abruptly smashed the wine glass in her hand. Glass shards flew everywhere. "Do it," she shouted sternly, her voice as cold as quenched ice. The main doors were kicked open with a bang. Dozens of fully armed, black-clad bodyguards rushed into the venue. The dark muzzles instantly aimed at everyone present. Director Zhao panicked completely, backing up repeatedly, knocked over the champagne tower behind him. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the hall. "Susu, are you crazy? What are you trying to do?" Bai Susu let out a sneer, stepping on the broken glass all over the floor, approaching step by step. "What am I doing?" "Cleaning house." She raised her hand. A thick document was violently smashed onto Director Zhao's face. Pages scattered all over the floor. Bribing the floor supervisor, poisoning and assassination, transferring the company's core assets. Uncle Zhao, do you really think in the same as 3 years ago? That vegetative patient at everyone's mercy. Director Zhao slumped to the ground, face ashen as death, his whole body shaking like sifting chaff. "No, it's not me. It's Bai Yu's remnants. They forced me." Drag him down, chop off his hands, and throw him into the river. Bai Susu didn't spout any nonsense. The bodyguards pounced on him like wolves and tigers. Like dragging dead dogs, they took the several elders who participated in the rebellion and dragged them all away. Screams echoed in the luxurious banquet hall. The whole venue was silent out of fear. No one dared to breathe. She won. The Bai family was thoroughly clean. I leaned behind the pillar, looking at that radiant woman on the stage. My mouth twitched into an ugly smile. Swallowing the last mouthful of black blood welling up in my throat. "The mission is complete. I should go." Bai Susu stood on the stage, her gaze sweeping the venue like a knife. Suddenly, her line of sight froze, crossing over the heavy sea of people, landing with absolute precision on the corner where I hid. I covered my mouth. The gaps between my fingers were full of black blood. The white waiter's shirt was dyed into large patches of dark red. The mask edges began to curl and peel off, soaked with sweat. Her face instantly turned as pale as paper. Lin Fan, a scream mournful to the extreme, tore through the deathly silence of the venue. She lifted the burgundy hem of her dress and rushed down from the stage like a madwoman. Her high heel snapped. She directly kicked off her shoes, stepping barefoot on the broken glass all over the floor, blood dripping profusely. She completely ignored it. "Stop her." I roared into the miniature microphone hidden in my collar. Mouse and a few brothers rushed out from the dark, firmly blocking her way. "Boss Bai, the scene is dangerous. You cannot go over there. Get away, all of you, get away from me." She was like an angry lioness, desperately shoving the bodyguards, tears surging out like a burst dam, ruining her delicate makeup. I supported myself on the Roman pillar, stood up unsteadily. I couldn't let her see me looking like this ghost. Even less could I die in front of her. I stumbled and crawled to bump open the side door, rushing into the dark fire escape stairs. Lin Fan, you come back here. Her desperate cries came through the door gap behind me. I gritted my teeth tightly, clutching my agonizing stomach, sprinted all the way down the stairs, rushed out of the hotel's main entrance. A blizzard had started and the cold wind mixed with ice chips scraped my face like a knife. I staggered on the empty streets. The toxin had completely invaded my heart meridian, vomiting large mouthfuls of blood with every step I took. The black bloodstains on the pure white snow left a long trail. I didn't know where to go. Subconsciously, I dragged that crippled left leg towards the riverside. The neon lights of the Cross River Bridge flickered in the snowstorm. 3 years ago, on New Year's Eve, she stuffed that brass key into my hand and told me to leave. 3 years later, I returned this life to her. We are even. I fell to my knees in the snow with a thud. Couldn't walk anymore. The pain in my internal organs began to fade, replaced by a bone-piercing chill. My vision completely sank into darkness. Only the howling wind remained in my ears. I collapsed into the snow. Curling into a ball, it's really cold. Even colder than that night in the basement when the heating was cut off. I closed my eyes, quietly waiting for death to arrive. Suddenly, the wind stopped. The snowflakes falling on my face disappeared. A black umbrella opened above my head, blocking the blizzard immediately following. A pair of trembling hands with a desperate force tightly hugged my freezing body. The cold cedar fragrance mixed with the strong smell of blood hit my face. A drop of scalding tears smashed onto my eyelid. Caught you a horse. Voice carrying a heavy crying tone sounded in my ears. This time, even if you die, you must die in my arms. The smell of disinfectant pierced my nasal cavity. My eyelids were as heavy as 1,000 pounds. I used all the strength in my body to force my eyes open a crack. The blinding, incandescent light made me dizzy. In my ears was the sharp alarm of the ECG monitor. An oxygen mask was strapped tightly on my face. Every breath felt like swallowing countless bloody razor blades. My internal organs felt as if they were being crazily crushed by a meat grinder. The pain nerves had tended to go numb. I rolled my dry eyeballs. My vision passed through the blurry mist. Gradually focusing, a deathly pale face was pressed against my cheek. It was Bai Susu. She had taken off that haute couture black suit. Wearing a crumpled hospital gown, thick bandages wrapped around her feet. Those were the wounds left from stepping barefoot on broken glass. Bright red blood seeped through the white gauze. Shocking to see. She lay on the edge of the bed, both hands firmly grasping my only intact left hand, pressing the back of my hand against her cheek, crying like a child who had lost the whole world. Tears ran down her chin and smashed onto my wrist. Scalding and burning, my fingers trembled slightly. Trying to wipe away her tears, she abruptly raised her head. An ecstatic light burst from her heavily swollen eye sockets. Lin Fan? She abruptly pounced on me, hands hovering in midair. Wanting to hug me, but afraid of touching my wounds, could only trace my silhouette in the void. Doctor, quick, call the doctor. Hayes awake. She turned her head and roared outside the door, voice hoarse and cracking. Carrying the madness of finding a way out of a dead end, I held her fingertips with my backhand. Ice cold to the bone. Don't yell. I tugged at my dry, cracked lips. A layer of white mist formed on the oxygen mask, letting out a weak whisper. She immediately turned back around. Cupping my gauze-wrapped face with both hands, I want yell. I want yell. She nodded desperately, tears crashing into my neck. Lin Fan, we won. She pressed her face against my palm, greedily absorbing my remaining body heat. That old Fox director Zhao. I had people shatter his knee. He knelt on the broken glass in the banquet hall, kowtowing until his face was covered in blood. I had his tendons and his hands and feet severed, and threw him into the abandoned chemical plant in the west of the city. And those spies by you left behind? I didn't spare a single one. How they hurt you. I made them pay back 100-fold. The Bai family is clean now. The whole Zhengcheng is clean. No one can ever threaten us again. You don't need to hide in the dark anymore. Don't need to be that Ashu who can't see the light of day. We can finally be together openly and proudly. She cried and laughed, incoherently showing off her spoils of war to me. Like a little girl presenting a treasure, I bought that villa in the south of the city. The yard is planted full of the southern magnolias. You like, when your injuries heal, we will move there. From now on, you are not allowed to go anywhere. Just stay by my side. I will support you for a lifetime. I looked at her eyes twinkling with tears and pulled out an ugly smile. I wanted to nod, wanted to tell her, okay, I won't go anywhere. The penetrating wound on my right shoulder sent a tearing severe pain. The remnants of the highly toxic poison rampaged crazily in my blood. A fishy sweet taste welled up in my throat. I tightly clenched my jaws. and forcefully swallowed that mouthful of black blood back down. The door was suddenly pushed open. The attending physician, Director Chen, brought several experts walking in briskly. Bai Susu abruptly stood up. Like grabbing onto a life-saving straw, she grabbed Director Chen's lab coat. Director Chen Hayes awake. He can talk to me now. Is he out of danger? Hurry and give him a comprehensive examination. Director Chen looked at the continuously alarming data on the ECG monitor, his face solemn as iron. He flipped my eyelids open. Shone a flashlight into them. The flashlight's halo diffused in my pupils. Director Chen sighed, slowly took off his stethoscope, and shook his head. Boss, prepare for his funeral? Those words struck the hospital room like thunderbolts. Bai Susu froze. The smile on her face instantly solidified. What did you say? She stared fixedly at Director Chen, her voice trembling terribly. The old injuries from the car crash years ago, combined with this lethal poison. Director Chen lowered his head, not daring to look into her eyes. The toxin has already triggered disseminated intravascular coagulation. The liver and kidneys are both showing massive necrosis. The speed of pulmonary fibrosis is astonishing. Myocardial cells are dying in batches. This is like a building, all its load-bearing walls blown up simultaneously. Collapse is only a matter of an instant. The awakening just now was merely a terminal lucidity. Even with our top medical team, using the best equipment, we can at most sustain his life for a few more hours. Bai Susu abruptly grabbed Director Chen's collar and slammed him fiercely against the doorframe. Bullshit. She was like a desperate lioness, roaring hysterically. My Bai group is worth hundreds of billions. I'll give the entire Bai group to you. Give him a blood transfusion, a heart transplant, whatever it takes. As long as you can save him. Her eyes were scarlet red. Her nails scratched bloody marks on Director Chen's neck. Save him. You bunch of useless trash. I spent so much money to keep you, and you can't even save a person's life. Believe it or not, I will smash this hospital. Director Chen let her tear at him, his eye sockets turning red. Boss, sorry. The toxin acted too fast. Even a god couldn't save him. You should hurry and spend some time talking to him. Director Chen waved his hand. Taking several nurses who were wiping their tears with heads bowed, he exited the room and gently closed the door behind him. In the hospital room, only the sharp alarm of the machines remained. Bai Susu slid to the ground as if drained of all strength, covering her face with her hands, letting out a desperate cry of grief like a beast. Why? God, why do you have to treat me like this? I endured 3 years of suffering. I risked my life. Just in exchange for this result, she slammed her head fiercely against the marble floor, making dull thuds. A bloody mark instantly formed on her forehead. Susu, I used all my might to call out her name, tore off the oxygen mask from my face. Panting heavily, gulping for air, Bai Susu's body jolted. She abruptly scrambled up, stumbling back to the bedside. I'm here. She haphazardly wiped away the tears on her face, her hands firmly pressing on my shoulders. Lin Fan, don't listen to his nonsense. That quack doctor knows nothing. I will take you abroad. Well, go to America, to Switzerland. I'll charter a private jet. We will leave right now. 3 years ago, you stole me from the morgue. In a -10-degree basement. You used your body heat to sustain my life. Today, it's my turn to save you. I have money now, Lin Fan. I have lots and lots of money. I've bought the best miracle drugs in the world. She incoherently planned our future, but her tears, like pearls from a broken string, smashed crazily onto my hospital gown. I looked at her, my vision getting blurrier and blurrier. The voice in my ears started fading in and out. My time is up. I bit the tip of my tongue until it bled, using that piercing, severe pain to forcefully keep myself awake, moving my left hand little by little, finally resting it on the back of her trembling hand. No need, I panted. Every word exhausted all my strength. Susu, am not leaving. Snowflakes began to fall outside the window. The New Year's Eve snow, exactly like that night. In the basement, 3 years ago, I turned my head, looking at the drifting snow outside. Bai Susu, it's snowing. She followed my gaze, tightly biting her lip, blood trickling down the corner of her mouth. Yes, it's snowing. She fought back her crying voice. When the snow stops, I'll push you outside to see the snow. Well, go to the riverside. To watch the fireworks, I shook my head, my gaze falling back onto her face. This face I watched for 3 years, guarded for 3 years. No matter how much I look, it's never enough. The pain receded like the tide, replaced by boundless cold. I felt my life force like sand in an hourglass, slipping away crazily through my fingers. The image on my retina began to fade, turning from color to black and white. Susu, come closer. I softly called her. She leaned down, pressed her head against my chest. Listening to my increasingly faint heartbeat, I used my last bit of strength, raised that uninjured left hand, and gently wiped the tears from the corner of her eye with my thumb. "Don't cry. You look really beautiful in this black suit, like a true queen." She firmly grasped my wrist, her nails digging into my flesh. "I don't want to be a queen. I only want you. Lin Fan, you haven't paid off what you owe me. You are not allowed to die. If you dare to die, I won't let you go, even as a ghost." She brought out the words I said to her in the basement 3 years ago, trying to keep me this way. I smiled, the vibration in my chest pulling at my wounds, my body getting lighter and lighter, like a feather about to be blown away by the wind. "Eldest Miss." I switched back to the title from 3 years ago. She abruptly raised her head, looking at me in astonishment. "Running for these 3 years has been so tiring, hiding in the dark watching you shine. Now the path is clear. No one will dare to bully you anymore." I looked into her eyes, and then reflected my scar-filled face. This clumsy driver finally brought the eldest miss safely to the destination. The frequency of the heart monitor got slower and slower. Bai Susu hugged me like crazy, burying her face tightly into the hollow of my neck. "There is no destination, Lin Fan. There is no destination. You promised to always stay with me. I love you. Lin Fan, I love you. Do you hear me? I love you." I heard it. The "I love you 3 years late" sounds so beautiful. I wanted to tell her, I love her too. Love her to the bones. Love her so much I don't even need my life. I opened my mouth, unable to make a sound. Darkness surged like a tide, completely swallowing my vision. The hand raised in midair lost all its strength and fell heavily. The ECG monitor drew a piercing straight line. A long beep pierced the silence of New Year's Eve. The world became completely quiet. My soul floated in midair, watching the woman in the ward cry until she passed out, watching the doctors and nurses rush in, watching the white cloth cover over my head, watching the heavy snow bury the whole of Jiangcheng. 5 years later, Jiangcheng Cross River Bridge. The river wind was still piercing. Splendid New Year's fireworks bloomed in the distant night sky. Bai Susu, dressed all in black, stood quietly in the snow. She cut her hair even shorter, eyes as cold as knives. In Jiangcheng's business world, mentioning Bai Susu's name, no one wasn't terrified. She swallowed up with iron blood tactics. All the underground forces in Jiangcheng pushed the Bai group to an unprecedented peak. She possessed everything the world looks up to: wealth, power, status. She stood at the very top of the pyramid and became the veritable king of this city. Snowflakes fell on her shoulders. She reached out her hand wearing black velvet gloves, caught a snowflake, watching it melt in her palm. Tied around her wrist was a faded red string. Hanging on the red string was a bloody brass key. That was the chip he traded his life to give me 3 years ago. Now it became her only reason to live on. A black bulletproof Maybach parked by the roadside. A bodyguard holding a black umbrella stood respectfully 3 meters away, not daring to approach half a step. "Boss, by the wind is strong. It's time to go back," the bodyguard reminded in a low voice. Bai Susu didn't turn her head. She quietly watched the rolling river water. Tears silently smashed down onto the snow, burning out little pits. "Lin Fan, it's snowing," she muttered to herself. Her voice was scattered by the river wind. "You said the clumsy driver brought me to the destination?" "No. What kind of destination is this world full of prosperity?" She won the world, but was forever trapped in that. -15 degrees, New Year's Eve, the end. The story serves as a deeply moving and emotionally devastating exploration of the ultimate limits of selflessness, sacrifice, and unconditional devotion, weaving a tale where love is not merely an emotion, but a profound, life-filtering pact written in blood and endurance. Through the harrowing and intertwined fates of Lin Fan and Bai Susu, the narrative illustrates how true loyalty requires stripping away all ego, social standing, and self-preservation, transforming ordinary individuals into extraordinary protectors who willingly trade their own safety, health, and dignity for the survival of the person they cherish. It captures the poignant tragedy of dual sacrifice where Bai Susu initially risks her life to shield Lin Fan during the vehicular collision, and Lin Fan subsequently spends 3 years crawling through the absolute mire of society, enduring unimaginable physical torment, betrayal, and a terminal poisoning, all just to function as her invisible shield against a corrupt and merciless world. Furthermore, the story offers a striking critique of the hollow nature of material wealth and absolute power, demonstrating through Bai Susu's eventual rise to the zenith of the business empire that conquering the world and standing at the pinnacle of society holds zero. Meaning, if the person who gave you a second chance at life is gone, ultimately, the narrative leaves audiences with a haunting and unforgettable reflection on how true love is an immortal, agonizing force that persists through betrayal, transcends death, and lingers like the bitter cold of a winter snowstorm. reminding us that the greatest form of devotion is the silent, unwavering willingness to become someone else's shield, shadow, and salvation, even at the ultimate cost of one's own breath.